Feel your best and amplify your everyday look with Thrive Causemetics. Go to thrivecausemetics.com/shine26 for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Causemetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/shine26.
Welcome back to A Conversation with Three Geeks. I'm joined today by Corey Sevier. It's so nice to meet you. I hope I said your last name right.
Yes, you're pretty close. Yeah, I say Sevier, but I accept all forms. So
that works. Go forward, it'll be Sevier.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So how did you get into acting?
So my path to acting was sort of unusual. When I was a baby, I had an older cousin that was in modeling. So doing, onesies, toy things like that, photo shoots. So my parents decided on my aunt's advice to try it out with me. So I started modeling at about 9 months old. So I grew up, and then my brother came along, and the two of us did modeling for like 7-8 years. And then when I was around 7, I started to audition for commercials and bit roles and films and TV, and was fortunate to start, booking a couple jobs, and that's how it all started for me. So
just started from model. That's incredible. My kids did some modeling and some commercials, and
yeah,
they never really wanted to pursue it any further than that. And now, of course, they're a little older, and now they want to. And I'm like, we should have stayed in it.
I know that's I hear that a lot. And like everything, like my parents, and I have kids myself, and our philosophy, like yours, is to try to expose them to as many different things as possible to see what they enjoy, see what sticks. But it was a big commitment on my family's part too. And, my parents, my mom in particular, driving, as I'm sure you found out, going to the audition, taking them to shoots. So it was a lot, but it's something that I loved and my brother loved. And so they let us do it. And all the things that come with it, the missing school and all that, the traveling, but it led to some really amazing experiences. So I'm grateful they let us stick with it. So yeah,
you're still working to this day, so it clearly stuck with you.
And my brother works in film, and my parents had no idea that at that age, as little kids, that it would lead to the paths for our whole lives. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Have y'all ever got to do anything together?
Yes, we have. My brother, when we were in our teens, my brother started doing work behind the scenes on films and things like that. So we worked together on that. We did tons of modeling shoots together. And we've also written projects together and hope to down the road continue to collaborate on stuff. So we've had little moments of projects our whole lives from kids on. We used to run around with our camcorder as kids making movies. That's what we did when we were teenagers. And the fact that we have an opportunity to try to do that as adults is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime you can do it with, people that mean something to you, it makes it even better.
It is. It really is, and I've spoken about it a lot, but my wife is also a writer, and we've collaborated on a number of projects the last couple of years that I've started directing. So it's, keeping it in the family, but working with people you love and trust so much is a huge asset, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's it like with getting to work with your wife?
Amazing. And people ask me that a lot. They're always like, wow, you guys still want to talk to each other at the end of it?
Yeah.
And, again, I'm lucky that, she's an incredible writer. We share very similar sensibilities. So when we've done projects together, we both very much are very supportive of each other. And her analogy she uses, her being the writer and me usually taking it on as director, and most of the time as an actor as well, is like a passing of a baton. We work closely, but it's very much her sort of race to get to that point. And then she sort of passes it off and goes, okay, it's up to you now. The stress is set and the post-production, that's on me. And so I think we found a really nice groove where we overlap, but we also have our own sort of strength, I guess you could say. So
that's awesome. What do you think helped kind of shape you getting to be a child actor and getting to continue through this? Sometimes it goes that far and other times it stops. How do you think that helped shape your career today?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And it's had a huge, there's so many sort of, as you said, paths that you can travel as a child actor. And I, first of all, I chalk it up to family support, love what I do, and some luck, because as you said, sometimes it doesn't always translate from child to teenager to adult. I learned so much as a kid. I hadn't, when I was young, my parents asked people, should we do acting lessons and in schooling for on camera performance. And because I had started at such a young age, it allowed me to get really comfortable in front of the camera. They kind of told my parents, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And I had this incredible, again, I grew up in Toronto, Canada, at a time where a lot of kids' TV shows were being shot where I was. So a lot of it is luck and opportunity too. So I had this sort of great onset experience where you learn everything from, the trials and tribulations to auditioning, working in an adult world, but also getting to have the coolest job, in my opinion, in the world, where you get to play for a living, working with incredible actors, incredible directors, where I was constantly learning from, honing sort of my skills, but also just sort of the way I approach the work, the dedication, dealing with the rejection, not getting things. Those are all a big part of what I learned as a child actor that has helped me to this day, now as an adult. So yeah, long story short, I had a very positive experience with it. I was fortunate enough to get some really cool roles that kept my interest and helped build my confidence. And still to this day, the way I approach the work is very similar to the way I did as a kid. So I owe so much of where I am now to those lessons that I learned early on.
That's incredible. Speaking of, things you did as a kid, Summer of the Monkeys was one of my favorite films growing up. And I feel so many people don't even know it when I talk about it. And I think that's crazy. And even Disney, it's not on where you can stream it.
You're right, actually, because we have Disney Plus.
I wanted to email them. I'm like, I need this on here.
It's funny. And it's, so it's funny. That's not that I have that kind of influence, but maybe I should try to make a few phone calls, because it's funny that you say that. Summer of the Monkeys holds a very special place in my heart. It was the first feature film that I got to play the lead role in. I'll never forget. First of all, you get to work with 4 chimpanzees, which how often do you get that opportunity? It was my first period piece, which I, to this day, have an affinity for, just because as an actor, you immerse yourself in the costumes, in the setting that is just so different from the world. It was based on this incredible book. I'm not sure if you knew it was written by the same author that did Where the Red Fern Grows, which is such an iconic book. Summer of the Monkeys, fantastic book, which I had the opportunity to read before we shot it. And I learned to ride a horse on that film. And so there were all these kind of first time things. I remember I literally turned 13. It was my birthday, in the scene where I'm hanging off the cliff with the monkey in my arms. And I'm going, how cool, how cool is this? So Summer of the Monkeys was an incredible learning experience. Michael Anderson was this director. He was in his late 70s at the time that we filmed Summer of the Monkeys. He directed the original Around the World in 80 Days, or I'm forgetting the name of the Around the World, and I forget anyway, it was an Oscar nominated film. So it was an incredible director to work with. Michael Onkean played my dad, Leslie Hope, 2 great actors that I got to learn a lot from. So Summer of the Monkeys is special to me too. And now that my son is getting to an age where I might be able to play the film for him, and we're on Disney all the time. So it would be cool if it popped up on that thread, because
it really is incredible to show them.
Yeah, be able to show them. And as you said, it means a lot to know that film, really resonated with you, because it was a special experience for me.
I did. I loved the book. And so we actually, we watched the movie in school, and then I always wanted it, and then I could never find it.
Oh my gosh.
And so this past Christmas, my husband found a DVD and he bought it for me for Christmas, and it made me cry. So
well, thank your husband for me. That's a very touching thing to hear. And I'm so glad that you finally found. I do have a DVD, a couple DVD copies myself. don't have a digital of it. But well, that's good to know that it's still floating out there. And I do recommend
somewhere around there. Yeah.
Bias aside, obviously I'm in the film, but I really do think it's a wonderful story. And
it is. It's a wonderful. I was really excited to introduce my kids to it. It has such good lessons. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And so you said you like period pieces too. It's kind of, in a way, Immortals.
Yes.
Yeah, just like Apollo. What was that experience like? That's another just incredible film with such a crazy cast. Like that had to be really interesting.
Like a pinch me moment to have been even, a part of a cast of that magnitude. And again, a story of that magnitude.
Yeah.
In high school, I really had an affinity for art history and learning about sort of the ancient civilizations. So, I knew of, Apollo and the Greek gods and all that. Also, the director Tarsem Singh had done some incredibly, really profound films that were so visually interesting. So, I, again, loved period pieces, very physical role. I did a lot of martial arts growing up. So it was an opportunity to work with, so the producers that produced Immortals also did the movie 300. Very iconic film. And the entire stunt team that worked on that film was the stunt team that we worked with on Immortals. So my time on camera was brief, but my training period with those incredible martial artists and weapon specialists were like weeks and weeks, and getting to work alongside, so many other incredible actors. It was just like a dream come true for a guy like in his early 20s to be able to do something so physical. The costumes, like the base camp for this film, it was the biggest film budget wise that I'd ever been on. So I never experienced something, but like, it was like city blocks essentially of like crews and so many people, the weapons people, the wardrobe people who worked so hard. We did full body casts so that all the armor fit us like perfectly to a T. It was everything you'd hoped it would be. A lot of it was green screen. That was also like, as in those huge Hollywood budget films, they build so much of the background behind you. So it was very imaginative as well. But when you find yourself standing there as Apollo with this huge sword in your hand, fighting 8 guys at once, for a guy who did a lot of martial arts, it was a dream come true. And like Henry Cavill and Luke Evans and, so many actors that I admired, and they were also wonderful to work with. It was like the complete, the antithesis, the other side of like doing something like Summer of the Monkeys, where you get to do something so intense. And I've always enjoyed films like that, so it was pretty cool to be a very small part of it. So
that's another incredible film. Going back to childhood one more time, one of our co-hosts is a huge Tommy Boy fan and wanted me to ask what your time was like on that set.
Oh man. So Tommy Boy was cool. It was a 1-day part. And I didn't get to meet Chris Farley or David Spade, but I did get to work with Dan Aykroyd. And again, it's a sort of blink and you miss me kind of role, but I spent the whole day there and I knew a lot of SNL stuff. So I was a big fan of Dan Aykroyd. So that was a very cool experience. And for those who don't know, if they ever go back and watch the film, I'm the little boy in the commercial that they watch in the motel room that gives them the idea to go find Dan Aykroyd's character. And I'm the little guy who sticks his head out the window and goes, "Thanks, Ray." Like that was my one line, right? But what I have to say, what was so cool about that was, first of all, it was a really fun day on set, getting to meet, Dan, but also I then got to go with my family as a 10-year-old to go see the movie on the big screen. So that was my first experience ever seeing myself on the big screen. So that was sort of seeing your name up there. But what made it extra special was that I loved the movie because, they only gave me the 1 page. I didn't know what the whole story was about. So I, with the audience, got to watch it. And it's just such an iconic comedy with so many incredible actors. It's a movie that we as a family would continue to watch, not because I was in it, but just because it was such a fun movie to watch. So I'm a fan as much as anybody else.
Love that.
Getting to be just a very small part of that film was, again, just a really cool thing.
Definitely. Kind of shifting gears over to more of the Hallmark type stuff. In the recent days, you've got to do a lot of the like romance style and Christmas films. are those things like you really prefer those stories, or just kind of, that's what people like you in?
Well, like I said, it's a combination of both. I like all stories, to be honest. People always ask me, what is it that I love about acting? I love playing and trying to inhabit different characters in different genres. And because I started at such a young age, I've had the opportunity to do period pieces and sci-fi and horror and drama and a little bit of comedy here and there. And when I started getting, offers to do Christmas films and romance films, I actually hadn't done as much of those. So in the beginning, I was a little nervous because, I'm used to these very kind of intense, and you're going, okay, well, he's just a guy who works in a coffee shop or whatever. And what I've learned is that I've had the opportunity. I'm very grateful for the fact that I've gotten to do a whole lot of them. And you work with so many other great co-stars, and I try to make everyone a little bit different depending on the role, but there is also an element of trying to be at ease and bring more of yourself to these too, because especially with the romance, is sort of bearing your soul is so important, I think, for the audience to connect. So it's been, whereas, things that I did when I was younger, depended on, the physicality or really emotional intensity. This has sort of, a vulnerability that you get to explore as an actor, which I've really loved doing. And I didn't even know until, more recent years, just how many people love tuning into these films. And that has made it even more meaningful to me, because you make any movie you make, you hope it has, it can resonate. But you don't know often. You don't get a chance to always have these great conversations that often. And I had an opportunity a few years ago to go to one of the Christmas cons for the first time, and coming face to face with so many people that just really, it's a huge part of the holiday season for them. It's family tradition, and they genuinely love tuning in for these over and over. It was so touching to me, especially having directed and my wife having written some of the more recent ones I've done. I'm so glad to see that they touch people, they're uplifting, and they explore the trials and tribulations of life in a more grounded, I think, relatable way than something like Immortals, which is just as exciting, but that's more escapism. Whereas this, I think, hopefully will resonate on a more sort of grounded level. And, you want to make people laugh. And, if you do your job right, if the story calls for it, maybe you shed a few tears, but in the end, it's about hope. A lot of the time, and family values and things that, are very close to my own heart. And to be able to sort of be a part of that universe has been very rewarding. So
how do you prepare for those really emotional scenes? Do you have like this process that helps get you where you need to be, or make it up on the fly?
You know what? It depends. And it's funny. One of the questions, that I was going to touch on was the difference between doing something like Immortals and something like a Hallmark film.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is time. In a movie like Immortals with that kind of a budget, you can be shooting the same action sequence from 10 different angles, and really in the script, it's like they land and they start to battle. Like it's a very short part of the script. Whereas in a Hallmark film, we shoot them often in 12, 13, 14 days. So you're doing 10 pages a day, which could easily be 3, 4, 5 scenes a day. So preparation time is much tighter in terms of, so in a way, there's a demand on you emotionally that is a wonderful challenge and great training, I think, for actors. At least that's been my experience. So to answer your question about how do you be prepared, again, you lean on the people around you. I've had great directors and great co-stars. And when you have the opportunity to do a really well-written script, I do think that I find that you want to be just open to see where it goes. I try not to have too much of a preconceived notion, but often you just find yourself getting caught up, because for me personally, obviously, what these stories are often about family and relationships and overcoming hardship. I think every person on a certain level can relate to that. And if you can just be open and tap into that vulnerability, you hope that these moments really, really land. And it can be overwhelming, but my philosophy is dive in. And I actually like it's almost like sports. It's like, try to be in the moment. And sometimes I find the best takes are the ones that just surprise you, that you're like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, but we have a half an hour before we lose the light and we got to shoot it. And then that adrenaline kind of just goes, and you just got to trust the process. And I find more often than not, you can find yourself getting there. So, yeah.
I love that. Has there been like a specific film that you've done that has challenged you the most as an actor?
Well, that's another great question. I mean, so many different films bring different challenges. I can talk about one film because we were talking about the Hallmark films. Yeah. I did a film called Noel Next Door a few years ago. That, again, talking about timing, I was shooting another film and I got the call. I had worked with the director before, a wonderful director named Max McGuire. And he goes, Corey, I've got this project. And it goes like 2 days after I was finishing the current film I was working on. And, you said, me, I'm all, I'll learn the lines, I'll get in there, I'll do it. But the challenge of the character I played in Noel Next Door was that he had suffered a stroke. And he had suffered an injury and he had a physical disability that he had lost feeling in a good part of the left side of his body, his upper body. I couldn't move my arm. So a role like that was very important to me. And I had such a short period of time to prepare for it that if I'm portraying something like that it be as authentic as possible. So it was a mad scramble of calling physiotherapists and trying to kind of get that physicality. So that was a real challenge that I felt like the onus to make sure we got it right. So we move so quickly with these films, you often don't have time to go back and check footage, but I was like running behind the monitor after every take, like, was the walk, was the use of the cane, the way I took my jacket off, was that because that part, the physical challenge of that particular role, not to mention underneath all that is the emotional weight of what the character was going through. But it's one of the ones that I'm most proud of because of that challenge. So that was one that because I had such a little time to prepare and I felt it was so important to try to get right. That was one that was definitely, I'd mark up as one of the bigger challenges for sure. So, yeah.
I like that you really put everything into that you would go to those links to make sure that you really sell that character and, don't just like go in there and you're like, oh yeah, sure, we'll do this. Well, you really put your all into that.
I try to with everything that I do. It comes from love. It comes from just, I love storytelling. And when you get a script, especially, having a brother, having a wife who write, like, how much time goes into something like that. And even if you have little time, I think you want to try to just give as much of it, as you can to it. And then from there, there's editors and directors and producers that will shape it. Although I've had that opportunity now in some of my own films to see through that full process. And you just really try to honor, the spirit of the original story, so hopefully it resonates with the audience as much as possible. So
definitely. How has directing and stuff been for you? Like it's a different world.
It is. It's actually one that I've wanted to step into for a long time. Ever since I was a kid, I had part of, touching back on one of your early questions about being a child actor, being in so much TV as a kid, you're working with a new director every week and you get, it's such a cool learning experience because every director has his own way. Every actor has his own process. So I got to watch so many and sort of cherry pick things that I liked from so many wonderful directors over the years that now that I've had the opportunity to do it myself, every situation is different, but I've been just chomping at the bit to get in there and work with other actors, work with writers, work with the post-production team, working with editors and composers and all that. So I've always loved acting. And I think I've loved it because it's just a part of the storytelling process. And as a director, you get even more you get your hands in even more facets of the cake, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I just love working with like every detail that's so important, talk about doing a Christmas film. It's, it's not just wall to wall Christmas, that there's so much thought that goes into like, what is this color palette, which might be way too much information.
No.
I don't want to know, but it's like, or wardrobe. How does the wardrobe affect the journey of the character and the growth. And like, there's just so many things that I've learned to appreciate even more, having directed, getting to work with so many amazing artists on the crew, obviously had the opportunity to work with so many amazing actors that, you try to give them everything you can. And then you just watch them come up with things that are even better than you could have imagined. So I love it. And then arguably my favorite process is working with the editors at the end, because then it's fighting for performance and fighting for those moments that I remember from set going, oh yeah, that little thing that happened. We got to make sure that we land that moment. So yeah, as you can tell, hugely passionate about directing. And hope that I continue to have the opportunity to do more of it.
Love that. Do you have any current projects coming up?
I do. There are projects coming up now. Directing, I'm kind of in the process with my wife working on a couple of at the script stage, but I do have several actually. Also, I'm shooting a feature film right now that's also a period piece that's brought me full circle to some of my earlier projects. Set in like 1917, I'm playing an RCMP officer based on a true story. Hence why I'm calling out the facial hair. It's like a wilderness kind of survival story that turns into this incredible true crime. Anyway, it's called Coppermine. So that's one project. We shot the first half of it at the end of last year, and now we're breaking because we're waiting for true winter. Although true winter has arrived here in Canada where I am. There's no question about that. Yes. So I'm halfway through that. And I did a Christmas project that hasn't been announced yet. So I probably shouldn't say too much about it, but it's a Hallmark Christmas film that we actually shot during this last Christmas. It's shot in Europe. That's going to be like the only tease, my first time doing a Hallmark film overseas. I had a wonderful co-star and team that I got to work with on that. So keep an eye out for this coming Christmas 2026. That's going to be a cool one. And then there's a few others. I did a TV show that I'm super excited to talk about, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I probably shouldn't. But when the time comes, I'll send a note out so people will know it's going to be out there. So yes, lots of stuff in the works. Hoping there's several projects of these projects I'm working on with my wife that I hope to direct. And there's some cool acting stuff that I'm in the middle of right now too. So
incredible. What's some good advice you would give to young actors that are just starting out?
Oh, great question. You have to love it. That I always start with that because if you love it, then all the ups and downs that come with the business can be worth it. And you meet so many incredible people from different walks of life in this business. You get to explore things about yourself. If you're fortunate, like I've been, you get to learn new skills, whether it be sports or training or, disabilities, any of those things, the facets of life that you kind of have an excuse to dive into. I love. So you go into it with an open heart, know that you have to have a thick skin, try not to take things personally. All you can control is what you put into it. So if you love it, give it your all. A lot is out of your control in this business, but control what you can, and surround yourself with supportive people if you're fortunate enough to have that. That would be the foundation that I would say, and then just see where your passions take you.
Love it. Well, Corey, where can everybody find you online?
Okay, I am on X or previously Twitter, and that's it. I'm not heavily on socials. But I do, whenever there's a new project coming out, I try to send a note out to let everybody know. Other than that, hopefully here and there on the TV or the big screen. So.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. I had a great time talking to you. We look forward to the projects coming out. Maybe once they're announced, we can have you back on and be able to go into some more details.
I would love to. I know I don't want to jump the gun on all the networks because I know they like to make their big announcements. But
and we don't want to get you in any trouble.
That's right. Thank you. I appreciate that. But so wonderful talking to you, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Everybody, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.